Hello. Hi, welcome. Oh, hi, Simon. Hi, Janae. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Rachel.
Hi. I'm sorry for joining a little bit late. We can get started here. Hi, Janae. I did see your chat, so that's cool if you want to keep using chat. I am on one screen though, so just note that I may not see your message right away. I will, jump back and forth. Um, All right, this is training session number 2 for for end users, I'm sorry. For end users, it's training session number 2. Let me share my screen here. What did I do with my FutureFeed screen? I think it's here. Yes. Can you guys see FutureFeed? Good. Can see my screen? Perfect.
Yeah, no, I can. Thanks.
All right, great. Okay, so like I said, this is the second session for end user training. So in the first session, I covered people, tools, documents, and today I'm going to cover the assess area of FutureFeed, system security plan, your system POA&M, referred to as your FutureFeed POA&M, and then we're going to talk about some deliverables. Feel free to stop me along the way and ask any questions. I love the engagement. And let me open up the floor by saying, since you guys sat through the first training, I know I threw a lot at you, but since you sat through the first training, do you guys have any questions, quick questions that I could address about any of these sections we covered in the first training? People, tools, documents, start, or dashboards? Because if not, I'm going to just jump right into it.
Yeah, nothing specific for me, Rachel. This is my second time in taking this session, just to make
Okay.
sure I don't miss anything.
Yeah, yeah. And Simon, I'm working very hard on getting some recorded content out for FutureFeed so people can watch on their own leisure.
No, I've received some of yours already, but sometimes you get little nuances when people ask questions or things that you haven't thought of before.
Yeah, yeah. All right, then I'll get started. And just so you guys are aware, this is recorded. The first session was, so you should get a link to that recording once it's available. All right, so the assess area in FutureFeed. The first thing I want to point out is you can change between the different frameworks that your company may be subscribed to. Okay, I'm just going to show a level 1, but if you were working and focusing on just your FCI environment, your level 1 environment, you'd want to change that view. So here's what the assess page looks like. I'm sure you've seen it by now. Just going to list all the requirements in that framework you have selected, and it's got some filter capability and status. It does also show objective status change history. So whenever you change an objective statement status from met to not met or anything else, it will show that history there if you need to take a look at it. For today's session, I'll just use, I think I'm going to use a 381 control because it's just the most filled out. Although this is a training environment, so just note that some of the stuff that is displayed or some of the information that was put into this system may not be like accurate to real world. So in the assess page, okay, this is where you are documenting the results or the status of the requirements. Okay, so there's 2 views in this page. There's this view here, the assess page, where it shows just one control, and then it has some sections down below. Let me minimize these so you can see them all together. So it has these 6 sections. If I want to go to the next control, I have to select up here and click on the next one. And now I'm seeing this page is just for this one control, this one requirement. We also have another view. It's called the Rapid Gap Assessment view. People use it to do basic assessments or like quick gap assessments. To get there, from here, click on the hamburger menu icon, the 3 lines right by the control family, and click on the little running man icon. So here, I'm going to go into the rapid gap assessment mode for the access control family. And now I have all the requirements listed in one page, and it's free from all of those other 5 sections where you're going to link artifacts and upload evidence and identify the people responsible. So you're not getting into that level of detail in this view page. You would simply be using this to kind of quickly address if the requirements are implemented or not, scrolling through the objectives and asking yourself or someone at your company, is this implemented? Yes or no? And then what you do is you kind of walk away with a more, all of the controls then will have a status, and it will be more accurate. It may not be the most accurate, but at least your FutureFeed environment is filled out and you have some direction and know what controls you need to focus on. But then this view here is where you fill out the more of the detail for each requirement. For 318, so we're going to use this one for the example. Here's the 6 sections. You have a requirement satisfaction summary section. That's a mouthful. Requirement satisfaction summary section. And this is the space where you're going to identify if the control is met or not down here at the objective level. And you're also going to define how the requirement is being implemented in this area. You're also going to identify any inheritance, or a better way to say it is you're going to identify any external service provider engagement for the requirements. And lastly, it's where you're going to create POA&M items for anything that's not implemented. So let's go over this section together. You have the summary notes. This is where you are defining for the requirement as a whole, giving that big picture, that whole picture of the process that you've implemented, or I guess I should say of the control that you implemented, defining how it's implemented for your company in your environment. So that's the summary notes section. If you click in there, you can edit. We track a little history, so you can view. There's a little spyglass thing that you can view an old statement, and you can restore to old statements as well if you'd like. It's your typical docx text editor. You can put a link. I want to call that out and show you that is you can drop links in these text boxes as well if you need to point to maybe an external SharePoint site or something. This confidence rating bar here, this is for some of the, I was going to say it's for service providers, but technically it can be for, everybody. What it is if I'm interviewing someone, let's say I'm interviewing you, Simon, about this requirement, and I ask you, hey, is this implemented? How are you doing it? How are you doing it? And you respond, actually, let's go here for this first objective. I say, hey, Simon, have you defined the limit of unsuccessful logon attempts? And you say, yeah, I think we've defined that. It should be in our access control policy, but I'm not sure, then my confidence rating on that interview response, my confidence rating on the overall implementation and the level of compliance is not going to be that great. Whereas if you pulled up the document and you were like, yeah, it's in our access control policy, and then you show me the specific section or send me a screenshot, my confidence rating is a lot higher that's accurate, and we pass an assessment and everything's good to go, right? So that's what that confidence rating bar is. It's just internal use. And then especially if you're, speaking to someone at your company like HR or the physical security officer, and you don't have a lot of insight into their world, you may need to just rely on that interview and what they say to you and what's your confidence of what they say if it's accurate.
Hey, Rachel, I had a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
So this gets put directly into the SSP,
Yes, it
the
does.
satisfaction summary. Yeah, I would have thought that would have been a key part of the SSP, or is the control really just you've got an SAP, you've got an SSP, or you don't have an SSP? Are they grading it sort of on how much information's in that SSP?
No, no. So the way your system security plan will be assessed is directly, so take a look, always refer back to the actual objectives. So they're going to look to see if you have an SSP, that's objective A. They want to see, does it describe the boundary and the operation, the system of operation? Does it outline all of the 110 requirements? If you said any of the requirements are not applicable, do you have documentation that that not applicable status has been approved? So they're going to look, this is how they're going to evaluate your system security plan.
So
If
you don't necessarily need an objective statement for everyone then.
no, yeah. For like this one here, that's more of a validation or operational
Right.
type control. You don't have to have a statement for everyone. Me personally, I would recommend having a statement. Let me go to that one that we have filled out. So in here, if you were trying to make a determination between should I fill out these summary notes or should I fill out the statement notes? Me personally, I would fill out the statement notes just because I know they say don't write your system security plan with the assessor point of view or don't write your SSP for your assessor. But it does help, right? Especially when you have to do your internal assessments and having specific implementation details for each objective is going to help move along and smooth out any internal assessment activity you have to do. And it is going to appease the external assessor and make that external assessment move a little bit more quickly as well.
Right.
Because then they don't have to read this overall big narrative here and try to dissect which parts of it are speaking directly to that one objective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it did up until what you just said there, the last little bit.
Yeah, so the summary notes here, let me open it up.
Okay.
Yeah, in here, I would say in the summary notes, you're kind of defining the big picture. So if
Yeah.
you just gave this to an assessor,
Oh, yeah.
from the assessor's perspective, they still need to make sure each objective is met. So then they have to read this and try to dissect, okay, this one sentence is for objective A and this one sentence is for objective B. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So of the two, I would recommend a statement. And then in some cases, it is just kind of a regurgitation of that statement, right? Especially like that one, is an SSP developed? Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I see what you mean now. The
Yeah.
chemistry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing the statement by each individual control rather than the summary statement. Got it. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Takes a minute, mate, sometimes, but I got it.
Yep. Perfect. All right. And then, of course, you guys got a video you can watch. This is the purpose, the why behind the requirement. And then we're always tracking compliance at the objective level. If you fail one objective during an assessment, you do fail the overall control requirement. With the exception, there's 2 controls you can get partial credit for. So general rule of thumb, just try to aim to meet every objective, have no gaps in the objectives. That way you can pass the overall control. And I am a lead CCA. I do assessments as well. So I guess just to validate what I'm saying, I wanted to throw that out there. All right, so at the objective level, we're saying if things are met, not met. I want to show you here for the second objective, B, I do not have a POA&M open right now, but if in FutureFeed, I mark this one as not met, FutureFeed is going to help me create that first POA&M item. So now I have a number 1. I do have an open POA&M item now for this objective. Once you mark something not met and this first POA&M item is created, the correct process would be then to open up this POA&M and fill out this information. So you need to define in this POA&M description, you're defining, maybe you'll touch a little bit on what the failure was. You don't have to, but definitely you want to define what's the fix. What's the process moving forward? Like, what do we have to do in the future? What do we got to fix? What do we got to implement? So that's what you want to define here, is that implementation plan or remediation plan. And it is going to come pre-populated, as you see here, with some narrative, some text. And this was just meant to be helpful. It was never meant to, like, you're going to follow this. But it's meant to be helpful with helping, you write that remediation plan or that implementation plan. But you would have to tailor this to your specific environment, right? And set impact, effort, cost, set a due date. It will come pre-populated with a due date. You can change it to quarters or dates. Definitely get someone tagged as responsible somewhere. Would strongly recommend the responsible objective be filled out and the accountable objective be filled out. If you could do all four, great, but at least one. Okay. At the objective level, you have an area to define that objective implementation. So define how that one objective is being implemented. And then we have inheritance at the objective level too. You have the capability to track inheritance at the objective level. So let me open up this statement. So this objective says the defined means, do you want me to do a different one, Simon? If you've sat through this one, I usually do 318. We can do another one.
Oh, no, I don't care. No, I'm learning stuff.
Okay.
Even on this session. It's awesome.
Okay. All right. So here, this objective says the defined means of limiting unsuccessful logon attempts is implemented. So in my narrative here, I'm going to talk about how that is implemented, how this limit of unsuccessful logon attempts is being implemented in my environment for all my assets. That's really important to remember, is when you are writing these summary notes or you are writing the assessment objective statements here, make sure to have a good understanding of all of the different assets that are in your environment. And you have to have an understanding of how this objective, how this requirement is being implemented on all of those assets. Okay. So this is a very technical control. And when it comes to the technical controls, you typically will see that you have more implementation statements. You have to type up more because, for example, this limit of unsuccessful logon attempts, well, how is that being implemented on my Windows assets? How is that being implemented on my Linux assets? Switches and routers have logon capability. So how am I limiting unsuccessful logon attempts for my switches or my routers or my firewalls that are in scope of my requirements? Any major applications that you're using to store, process, or transmit CUI data, like a CRM, how is that application limiting unsuccessful logon attempts? And so ask yourself this one objective for each asset type and then define how it's implemented. So here I'm just showing you, I have different statements. My window point are in Entra ID that is making all of my endpoints pick up this limit of unsuccessful logon attempts. And I go on to say that my Entra ID is being managed by an external service provider, and they're responsible for maintaining account policies and access, yada, yada, yada. Then I go on to say for my firewall, it's actually a local setting on the firewall by logging into the configuration, the management portal of that firewall and setting something. It's a local setting. My firewall is not picking up my limit of unsuccessful logon attempts, my limit from Entra ID. It's got to be set by a local setting. And I go on to say that my administrator is doing that. So that's being done in-house. There's no external service provider managing my firewall. And, my firewall server, here's a good example of maybe some inheritance. So in this fake environment, I have Prevail, which is a major software hosted in the cloud, and it's hosting CUI data for me. And so I say this requirement is fully inherited from Prevail, meaning Prevail, the vendor, the builder of Prevail, is fully responsible for configuring Prevail, the application, to limit unsuccessful logon attempts. I, as a user of that application, cannot control the application's configuration settings. And so this is fully inherited from Prevail. And instead of regurgitating or repeating what Prevail has actually done in the application, because specifically for applications, they'll have application security documentation, and they'll have a customer responsibility matrix. And so in those documents, it will go into detail on how that application is implementing the requirements. Well, instead of repeating them here, I'm saying, just please say, I'm pointing the assessors to that Prevail customer responsibility matrix, which will give the level of detail an assessor is looking for when evaluating this one objective for Prevail. And I like to use these kind of statements here because I think I may have mentioned this in the first session, but when it comes to documentation, any documentation, try to always have one source of truth. So that way, if I took the time to define how Prevail is specifically implementing something right here, if I took the time to define it, maybe I looked at their Prevail system security plan or the Prevail CRM, and I copied a couple paragraphs out of there and I put them in here. That's fine for an assessment. It will work. But let's say Prevail changes something a year from now. Well, then I'm going to have to go in and make sure that I've updated and changed my system security plan definition. So I do try to refrain from, especially for any external service provider engagements, I try to refrain from giving too much detail here and allow that documentation that external service provider must provide under CMMC, allow that documentation to go into the level of detail an assessor wants to see. So that's just another tip too. I would refer a lot to any customer responsibility matrices if there was inheritance. All right, so I think it's pretty clear. We have, for this one objective B, we have inheritance. So after you define the implementation for the objective, after you work on defining all this and laying it all out, then you're going to want to make sure that this inheritance icon aligns with what you've defined. And so you'll click on that. You have three options. No inheritance means there are no external service providers engaged. My company is solely responsible for implementing that requirement. I guess one could argue your company is solely responsible for implementing all. Accountability can't be passed off, but responsibility can. Okay, so not inherited or no inheritance means you do not have anybody else doing that requirement for you or implementing that requirement for you. You're doing it by yourself with an employee at your company in-house. Partially inherited, okay? That means for this one objective, I have responsibility and someone else has responsibility for implementing that one objective everywhere in my environment, okay? Fully responsibility is if I was paying someone for a service and they're meeting the objective 100% with that service, it's being done by someone other than my company, then you have full inheritance. So for this specific objective, I'm going to mark it as partially inherited, remember, because for my Windows, an external service provider is doing something. For my firewall, I got to do something. For Prevail, a different external service provider is doing something. And so overall, it's partially inherited in my environment. After you set the status, then click on the little number, or if you haven't filled this out before, a little yellow triangle will pop up. Click on that. And now what you're doing is just by using this teardrop alone, I'm saying I have some inheritance somewhere. When I open it up, then I'm clearly identifying where that inheritance is coming from. Okay, so here I want to go through. Notice I can't select any of these right now. Okay, but I will want to select, let's see. Well, I guess for time purposes, I can't really work this all the way through, but let me tell you, so you would click on this and then you would check the asset where there's some inheritance. And if we'll walk through one of them, not all of them, but let's see, Prevail. So I can see Prevail right there, but I can't click on it. When this happens to you, it's because you haven't identified Prevail as having external service provider engagement. And so to do that, I have to close out of here. I have to scroll down and find my Prevail entry. Remember, all of my technology is going to show up under test. So I'll expand my test area and find Prevail. Okay, there's Prevail. I'm going to click on it. And actually, click on this one. Okay. I can't do it from there. I have to add it over here from Tools and Services. Click on Prevail. I don't have one, so let me add it quick. SAS, Prevail. This is what happens when I use the training environment. I kind of mess it up every once in a while. All right, so let me add an entry for just Prevail, the software. If you notice down here, I had a Prevail instance under vendor, but I'm just calling out the vendor, not the actual software. And so I needed to create a software entry for my Prevail instance. And there I did. So back to what I was saying, you'll go find the tool, click it open. Now there's this customer responsibility field right here. It's not set. So FutureFeed thinks there's no inheritance. But if you click on it, then find the provider of the service or the provider of their tool, find their CRM entry. And now I have associated that responsibility matrix with Prevail. If I click out of here and let me refresh, scroll on down to my tools area. See, now I have this CRM ribbon flag right here. That's what I need. So if I scroll back up now to my inheritance icon, I click on it. Now I should be able to select my Prevail CRM. This is from and this. Now, and select Windows assets. I would select my firewall, or I'm sorry, Entra ID, I would select those other tools that are being managed by or provided by external service provider. So the tip is if you see the tool here, but you can't click on it, it's because you haven't set that CRM flag in the inventory item. So find it down below and do that. If you happen to not see it in here at all, like I don't see Entra ID. So let's go. If you don't see what you want to select, then I just haven't linked it down below. I have to go to my test area and connect Entra ID in here, which I guess I don't have either anymore. I don't know what happened. Something. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. INA. Okay, there we go. So scrolling back up to the inheritance. Okay, if you don't see it, that means it's not connected down below. And then if you do see it, but you can't click on it, it's because it doesn't have that CRM flag. If I would have refreshed this, I'm sure my Entra ID would now be present. Right there, Entra ID. But it doesn't have the CRM flag, so I can't click it. All right, so just a little troubleshooting. But again, just to wrap up this section, the requirement satisfaction summary area is where you're defining how that requirement is being implemented. You're defining the implementation method as a whole at the control level and at the objective statement level. You're defining if something is implemented, meaning it's met, or if it's not implemented, meaning it's not met. You can also mark something as not applicable. You open POA&Ms here for anything that's not met. You can create more than one poem if you'd like to. Just click on the poem item. Here's my first poem. And if I click on add poem, I would be adding a second poem item for this one objective. I don't know what I'm doing here. So if I close out, now I have two poem items for this one objective. Here's my first one, and if I scroll down, here's that second one. And then inheritance at the objective level. Any questions with this requirement satisfaction summary area? All right, so the other sections are, remember, we're still in the assess area and we're under one control. You have the next three sections are assessment methods. We're using the assessment method terms here. All C3PAO assessors are taught to assess your environment or assess your level of compliance by using these three methods. They're going to interview people at your company to see if what you're doing in operations aligns with the requirements and what you've defined in your documentation. They're going to examine stuff. They're going to examine documents. They're going to examine configuration settings. They're going to examine screen share, examine reports and other outputs. And then they're going to test. They like to test. We're taught to test as much as we can. You can't test every objective. You can't test every control. It's very hard to, it's hard to test some of them. But for those, sometimes they do like to perform a simple test. And that's why under the test area, we list the technology, because if they were going to be doing a test, then it would be most likely on that technology. So a test example would be like, open up your Entra ID, show me the configuration setting that is specifically related to this requirement. And I want to see that this asset, IP address 10.10.10.10, is picking up the policy that's enforcing a limit of unsuccessful logon attempts. That's just one example. So they're executing the objective. Whatever the objective is, they're trying to execute it to see if the outcome is what is it's supposed to be. They're performing a test. And so we've named these sections accordingly. Okay, so interview, for this one requirement, 318 under interview, you're identifying everybody that could potentially be interviewed for this requirement. So you're going to identify the people responsible for the requirement. Who's responsible for implementing the requirement, who's accountable, consultant informed. I think I covered the RACI model a couple different times. So here's where you would identify responsibility for this one requirement. And then when you do your internal assessments, these are the people you're going to call up and say, hey, Jill, is that Entra ID security policy still present? Nobody accidentally deleted it, and are all my CUI assets picking up that policy? And you'll collect new evidence. You'll ask them, you're going to interview them, you're going to examine, and sometimes you might test yourselves internally. But also, these are the people who are going to be interviewed for any C3PO assessments. Examine. So this is where you're linking your artifacts and documentation that you've housed in FutureFeed. This comes from the documents area of FutureFeed. So if I wanted to add another document, I just click add and I navigate to where it's at and I add it. If I don't find the document, that means I've never logged it in this document section. So I need to go create an entry first. But you're connecting your evidence and artifacts test. We already went over that. So this is where your technology gets added. Think of this requirement. Think of this one requirement. You want to, in this test area, you want to identify all the technology that is picking up that requirement, all the technology that needs to meet that requirement. But then you'll also identify the technology that's helping you implement that requirement in your environment. You'll take both of those, which technically, this is technically the tools that are helping you implement the requirements like Entra ID. They also have to pick up this requirement, right? To your Entra ID, you don't want just anybody to log into Entra ID and change all your configuration settings up. It has to be login controlled, right? Access controlled. So in this test area, everything that's picking up the requirements and helping you implement them. You have an area called additional artifacts. This is where you would house evidence. Anything you upload here is only ever going to be found under this 381 control. That's important to note. You're not going to be able to find it over here in the documents section. And then you have an area for it just lists a couple questions. So if you are doing that internal assessment and you're kind of stuck on what to ask, what to look for, these are just a couple questions. These are questions like that an external assessor would ask. And so you can click on them and answer them if you would like. You don't have to use this section if you don't want, but some people choose to. I want to quickly talk about artifacts quick. And then I got to move on because I've really covered a lot. I think I've talked too much. But artifacts, let's talk about where to upload your screenshots and other artifacts like that. So in this requirement satisfaction summary, there's two objectives. Objective B. Objective B is going to be the objective where they're looking for screenshots of like configuration settings or a config report or something like that. And so are you going to go over into the document section and create a new document called firewall configuration screenshot? No, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't want to do that. I guess you could if you want it, but that's going to be a lot. What you'll do is for objective B, the limit of unsuccessful logon attempts. Let's say I have a screenshot of my firewall setting. I will go down to find my firewall. Here's my firewall, open it up. And in here, there's an evidence tab. This is where I would upload the screenshot of that firewall's config setting. And then under, just by having the firewall linked under 318, you're going to be able to get to and find that screenshot. You'll just click on it, go over here, and be able to pull up the screenshot for yourselves or an assessor. Okay. But your choice if you want to upload it here, upload it elsewhere. It's preference. That's the assess area. I've covered all of the fields of a control. You have a gap assessment mode where you can run through all of the controls in a little bit, shorter of an interface. And then you have the full assessment page, which has those 6 sections where you identify how it's implemented, you identify inheritance, you create POA&Ms, you identify status, and you link all of your artifacts and your evidence. And identify personnel responsible. Okay, this system, moving on, the system security plan area here, this is just a browser view of your system security plan. And so you can go over to the deliverables area, and under SSP, you can run a system security plan report. Then you'll end up with a system security plan in a Word document. But if you want to do all of the reviewing of that system security plan before you run the report, before you generate a big 60, 70, 80 page document, if you want to review the system security plan and edit the system security plan and get it approved in FutureFeed, you would do that in this system security plan subway stop. So this is, like I said, it's just a browser representation of your SSP. But the data shown here is the same data that you're going to see in the system security plan Word document. So here you're just going to go through the different sections of your SSP and review the data. And if needed, let's say that this address is inaccurate, it's old. I'm going to click on the pencil icon. It's going to bring me back to that section of FutureFeed for me to update that address. And then if I go back, it will be fixed. So to edit, you just click on the pencil. We have this compliance review table here, and one way of using it is that you could assign the pages, the different sections of your SSP, right? Let's say I'm going to assign this system info section to myself because I'm the system owner. I'm the system ISM, maybe. And I know a lot about the system. I know the name, I know the what's in it, all the assets in it, all that stuff. So I would assign this page to me. But maybe in this organizational information where it talks about the company, location, address, NIAX codes, all that stuff, maybe I assign this page to my CEO because he knows more about that information. So you see how this compliance review box, it's different for each section. Here I got Bart assigned, and over here I got myself assigned. Then those people would log in, review, edit the data, fill it out. If it looks good, they're going to mark it reviewed. If they're really happy with it, they can mark it approved, or maybe someone else at your company can approve it. But that's how you'd use that box, and it is different per the sections. Okay, so over here under the requirements section, I would expect you'd want to assign this section to someone who really understands, all of the requirements and how they're implemented. But you would just work through the different sections and review the data. We also have this reviewed, not reviewed flag down here. You can use this if you want to track the different sections as reviewed. Keeps a little history log around, which is pretty nice. Any questions on the SSP area? My recommendation for you here is to, once you get FutureFeed populated, once you get the requirements filled out, it doesn't have to be perfect, but once you start putting some of that basic data in there, run a system security report so you can get familiar with how it looks in a Word document, and you can see how this information being presented on the screen right here translates to that Word document. There are some things we've heard feedback from some people, and I'm really sorry, I'm just talking a lot, but I have the capability to run over. I will try to wrap it up in 10 minutes, but if we need to run over, I can. What was I saying? Oh, we have received some help desk tickets where people would like to remove some information from their system security plan, the Word document that gets generated. They would like some information to not show up in that report. At this point in time, you don't have that ability to control. If you run this system security plan report, it's going to be the same format everybody who uses FutureFeed uses right now. So there may be some information in there that you may not want to have in your system security plan, especially maybe the version that you send to a C3PAO assessor. Okay. So the process would be that you run the report and then look at it and just delete. It's a Word document, so you can delete out the sections that you don't want in there or the information you don't want it in there. For example, like user count. I think user count is in the system security plan. Some people don't choose not to track the number of users for certain assets in FutureFeed. Okay, so you don't have to use all of the sections of FutureFeed. You would just want to delete that data from the SSP that you give the assessor because it's going to be blank if you're not using that section. Now, we are working on the dev team is actively working on making it so the report can be modified by you guys. So if you say you don't want that user count in your SSP report, you'll click a button or do something. I'm not sure how they're going to have it laid out, but you'll be able to control what that Word version looks like and what this version here includes as well. So
And
that's,
just clarify something there, Rachel.
yeah,
So when you do the objective statement and then you do, or the summary statement, you do a publish,
yeah,
that goes into your SSP.
yes.
Right. So what happens if I decide then to edit that information that I put in there and say, take a paragraph out? When I publish again, it automatically takes that paragraph out. It doesn't append it, does it?
Right. It automatically takes it out. Correct.
Right, right. Okay. So all we're talking about is the headings, basically, just the sections that are in the system security plan,
Yes.
editing those. Okay, got it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. All right. All right. So then that brings us to your FutureFeed, which is the system POA&M, your system plan of action. So all throughout FutureFeed, as I've covered in this training in the previous, you can create POA&M entries. You can create POA&M entries for non-compliant objectives. You can create POA&M entries for documentation that's still in development. You can create POA&M entries for tools you're planning to acquire, or maybe if a tool is non-compliant and you need to push you need to update its baseline configuration for it to become compliant, you could create a POA&M item for that kind of stuff. So even up here, this little yellow light bulb, you see that thing called new idea? This does not mean new idea to FutureFeed. It's a new idea to your FutureFeed. It's a new idea to your POA&M. So you're not submitting a, hey, a suggested improvement to the FutureFeed team, us. If you create something here, we can do it right now. Let's call it, look into encryption. Like it's meant for like if you have something that pops into your head and you want to jot it down and you don't want to forget about that item because it's compliance related and you have to make sure it gets done. So let me say, look into encryption settings of, I don't know, my CRM tool in the cloud. Write what you thought of down, write what action you want to happen. What you're doing is you're creating a POA&M. Okay, I hit save. Now I just created a POA&M item for that random thing. And so in FutureFeed, you can create POA&M items for pretty much anything you want to. When you do, they're going to show up here and they're filtered. So pending, in progress and completed. You have filtering capability. You can export to Excel or CSV. You can change up the columns that you see in the order. Okay. Now what we've done is we've implemented this project builder. So I've been managing compliance packages for 16 years now. I started with the Navy a long time ago. And majority of my life, I was doing RMF, ATO, and NIST 171 packages to include managing system POA&Ms. When it comes to managing system POA&Ms, that's a decent amount of effort there. It's a lot you got to do, especially if you have a good amount of POA&M items. And so we've implemented this project builder where instead of, having to look at each item line by line and check in on the status. Okay, is the work still ongoing? Is there any issues? You got any roadblocks? Maybe Jill left the company and now this item needs to be reassigned to someone else, right? You have to manage your system POA&M. You have to stay on top of these items and keep tracking them and make sure that there's forward movement, and track them until you become compliant and then close them out and collect evidence. So right now I only have 36 in here. That's not too much to handle, but we're talking hundreds and sometimes hundreds of POA&M items, and that can be a lot. So with the project builder is you would want to group like POA&M items. For example, maybe you have one firewall administrator. So you would group all of the firewall stuff. Let's pretend that these three are, just to show you how it works, I would group these. Let's pretend all three of these are something to do with the firewall security. There has to be updates. I'm going to hit add to projects and I will look to see if I already have that project, which I don't. So I'm going to create one, firewall security work, name it whatever you want, hit create. I really don't want to hit create because then I'll be creating a weird project and that's how I get myself in these bad training situations. But you hit create and then it creates a project. Now I'll go over to my project portfolio and here are all my projects I've created. Now, instead of trying to follow up on all 30, 40, 50, 60 line items, now I just need to follow up on maybe a couple line items in these 10 different projects. Okay, so once you create a project, then you'll want to open up the project and fill out this data. Again, impact, effort, and cost. Due date, very important. Get the people responsible for doing the work tagged. Project status, so is it still planned? Or do you have the all clear to go ahead and start working on that? In progress, completed. Any pricing, budgeting information. You have a place to upload project documentation. And then here are all the individual items that are part of this project. Currently, this project only has one item in it, but I'm assuming your projects would have more. Hopefully none, though. Hopefully you don't have any flaws or non-compliance. But all right, so that's what a project looks like. And that's what it's used for, is to help you organize all of the non-compliance, all of the system flaws into packages, get them assigned to the right people so they can start working on them. If you want to create any sort of tasks related to a POA&M item, you do not have that capability right now. Unfortunately, I wish we did. I did make that recommendation and hopefully they can improve it. But right now, like if I went down to this list here, this system security plan software list, and I wanted Jill to give me a status update. Let's say that. I could call her or I could click on this and go over here to tasks and create a task. Jill provides status update on software listing. Assign it to Jill. Oh, there it is. Hit submit. And now Jill will get a notification. They have a new task in FutureFeed. They'll log in, click on the task, and she can provide you a status update. So that's kind of where you would create your tasks. If you need to define, I'm sorry, I'm stuttering. If you need to define specific activity or tasks related to a POA&M item, you'll do it in the tools or the documents section that are associated with that POA&M item, okay? For now, that's kind of a workaround. I would like to see it where I could open up this POA&M and maybe create a task. I'm sorry, that was a bad example. Because if you click on an objective POA&M item, you see here, I can't create a task here. And I would like to see that in the future, but. All right, then we have deliverables. Just quickly wrap this up. I'm at time, and like I said, I'll stick around, answer any questions, but we have deliverables. So in here, you're running reports or exporting data. Of course, you do have that system security plan report that I said you can export. Just hit the download button and it will run it. I'm not going to do it because it takes a minute, but definitely recommend you run one just so you can kind of see what it looks like and what it, all the data how it's presented. Once you run a SSP, let's say I go into FutureFeed and I update a few statuses and I close out some POA&M items and we're making progress. The scores changed a lot and I want to make a version of my SSP. I want to lock it in. So I want someone to approve my system security plan at that point in time. Then what you'll do is after you download it, go find that version you downloaded and hit the edit button. So let me find one. Because if you notice, if you hover, this is a readiness report. You see, I don't know if you can see on my screen share, it pops up. It says cyber readiness, Lighty subscription. So that's not my SSP, that's a report. So here, let's pretend that this was the last SSP that I exported and I want someone to approve it. I can click on that approval. What did it say? What was the little stamp? The approve this report. And note, you can also approve your cyber readiness reports too. So what I'm showing you isn't applicable to just your SSP. Then you would click in here, who approved it, what date, here's their signature that they approved it. And maybe if you have your own internal versioning of your documents, type out your version. Maybe you want to highlight, why am I routing this version again for a signature? What changed? Well, I closed a couple POA&Ms and now we have 5 more controls that are met in our score. Describe the version, why you ran that report, why you're looking to get it approved. If you used it to submit to SPRS, what day did you submit your score into SPRS? Or if you are going to use this SSP to submit your score into SPRS, then you would mark that here. And here's a little SPRS submission. So if you got to submit your score in SPRS, here's your score. Here's the last assessment date, POA&M date, all that. This is all information. I don't know if you've ever submitted your score in SPRS, but when you do, they ask for this information. And they also ask for the title of your system security plan and the version of your system security plan, because they would like it if you retained and you archived that system security plan, that version of the system security plan. So if you ever get audited, and Simon, they're like, hey, Simon, on December of last year, you submitted a SPRS score of a positive 110. Please give me the system security plan that aligns with that score that was from that time when you uploaded it. And so when you make this SPRS submission, if you do a little snapshot right here, it will generate for you a system security plan and archive it down below. So you can always have that. If you ever do get audited, you can say, oh yeah, I submitted it on this date and here's my SSP. So that's what that's about. Export data. So you have the ability to export all of the files and all of the data you've put into FutureFeed. I will I would expect you guys to use this at some point. Especially when you're engaging with a C3PAO assessment team and they ask, okay, give me your SSP and give me all your evidence. What they're looking for is that you have implemented the and what FutureFeed is doing for you in this assess area is it's building out that body of evidence. It's identifying the requirements and it's identifying all of the evidence that you've tagged to that control, showing that that control is being implemented, right? So I would expect that you would generate a big export to help you get that evidence over to your C3PAO team. POAM, here you can export your POAM actions and the listing of your projects. Here, it's a Word version. If you go into your system POAM, you would be exporting, you could export to Excel or CSV over here. And then presentations, this is the last thing I'd like to cover. So let's just build a presentation together or a report. That's all you're doing here is we recognize in FutureFeed, in all of the other areas, you're doing a lot of work. And most likely you'll have to present on that work or give a status update or, you know, check in and here's how the progress of the project is going. And so we've given you the ability to create reports or presentations directly out of FutureFeed using that data you're already put into FutureFeed. And so here you'd go to setup, presenter name, email, phone, executive summary. So what is the purpose of the report you're generating or the presentation? After you fill that out, come to the cyber readiness builder. You can change the theme. So we'll do a military theme. Then select what information you want to see in that report. So I'm going to make everything not visible. And then let's say I'm meeting with my CEO and I'm going to tell them about our assessments score. Maybe I'm going to show them my system POAM metrics. It's going to go over how many POAM items we have, the level of non-compliance, all that stuff. So yeah, maybe we just want to leave it at that and I hit play up here. So now it's going to generate for me a presentation. Here's my scope, more information down below, a lot of information gets in these. Here's my current score and information going over. Here's my POAM. Here's all my POAM items. I got how many open, how many complete. Here's another look at some POAM stuff. So, and then hit exit to exit or download to download. If you're presenting directly out of FutureFeed, like I was just showing you, it does look more like a presentation, more like a PowerPoint. If I downloaded the report, it's going to look like a nice executive report. And so, yeah, I've pretty much covered it all. So I know we're over time. I'm going to stop sharing just so I could see the screen. And do you guys have any questions or do you want me to cover anything else?
No questions for me. I've been following along inside my FutureFeed program.
Awesome. Okay, well, then I'm going to go ahead and end the call and give it about an hour. You'll get a recording. You'll get a link to this recording.
Hey, Rachel.
Okay, bye.
Well, that's great. I did have a question actually, but
Yeah.
the other person was talking. That's okay. Hey, so I thought I saw somewhere that you had some templates or something.
Yeah.
With things like what was it? I thought I saw it on your site anyway. Application owner training or something like that. I'm not sure that FutureFeed would be the right place, if you know what I mean. I'm just struggling a little bit to find some decent templates for stuff. We've got templates, but they're a little bit long-winded in some instances, especially the application owner training stuff.
Okay. And
You know,
application
what I'm trying
owner.
to do is sorry.
I'm sorry. I think there was
No, I'm just trying to get engagement. The ones that we got off our consultant were kind of very long and complicated. And I want to make sure we get decent engagement with people who are extremely busy. And this is not at the top of their priority list, you know.
Yeah.
So I wanted to sort of like cut it down a little bit and make it simpler. I thought I'd seen somewhere that you had some document templates, but
Yeah.
I haven't been able to find it.
Yeah, there are. So I'm sharing my screen again. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can, yeah.
All right. So I'm in the document section.
Mm-hmm.
If you click on this populate button, it will show you, we have 55 templates in here that you can use and FutureFeed didn't create them. If you hover over them, let me see. Let me click on one here that I know. Like if I click on this access control policy, if you
Oh, right.
someone took it from the New York State Department of Financial Services website.
Got it.
Before my time here with the company,
Yeah.
they wanted to offer some templates, and these are all publicly available. So someone found this back in the day and uploaded it. But yeah, you do have 55 of them here.
Excellent. Okay. I thought I'd seen them, but I think I've been in there and I
Yeah.
saw authorized remote access and didn't put it two and two together. But I thought, okay, the publish, I think, is the key to that, to viewing those.
Yes.
Excellent.
So what you do next is if you want to use one, let's say you want to use this list template here. I mean, it's pretty bare bones, but let's say you want to use it. You just hit copy and create. And
Right.
it just created an inventory item for that. You'll have to go find it. So it was a list that I created, which should populate under the worksheet area. Doesn't look like it did, so it must be. Oh, well, you know what? Maybe it's in the list category. There you go. There it is, the authorized remote access list. So it will create this entry and then open it up. And now in this live document, this is where you're going to start modifying the template or filling it out.
Perfect. That's awesome.
Now, that's that way. There's a different way to get to them. So let me show you that real quick. But let me go to a policy. If I go to my access control policy template here, and I've already created this, and I'm like, okay, well, we don't have a document started yet. I need one. If I click this plus in here, go to templates, and then you can get to those templates from here as well.
Oh.
But what I'm showing you is this is only showing you the policy templates because I'm in the access control policy. I'm in a policy item. So the templates are only going to show me the policy from this point of view, from this way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you go to the edit, you go to live document.
Plus templates.
No. Plus templates, yeah. Okay.
And then you find it.
All right. No, that's great. All right. Now where to find that now.
Yeah.
Hey, there was one other question. Well, it's actually a suggestion. On the project, I think the project thing is great because I was just about, and you saved me a lot of time to start doing this in SharePoint tasks, where, putting a project up there so I could track some of these items. What I really like about, SharePoint and project and what have you, is the Gantt chart view, where you can get everything right in one pane, and you can instantly just look and see what the status is. You can see red for things that are overrunning and what have you. Will there be any plans to do sort of like that as a summary in FutureFeed?
Well, that's a great addition, and I don't know if it's on the track. The way they handle updates like that is if they get enough users asking for that improvement, then they're going to prioritize that. But if nobody asks, then it's lower priority. If one person asks a year ago, it's so I would just say I can definitely take what you said back to the team. But they work purely on tickets. So someone's got to submit a ticket for that and then they'll respond to it. Or
I'll do that.
One thing you could do is, submit a ticket to support@futurefeed.co and just say, hey, I'd recommend adding a Gantt type view to the project portfolio.
Yeah.
Then once they get enough of those, I couldn't tell you. I don't know if that's been recommended before. That's a great recommendation. It may be out there already, but that's kind of how they handle those.
Yeah, I just felt that, you know, obviously it's like anything new, you get to figure out where everything is, but there is quite a steep learning curve on getting to all the different places, remembering where to do what and how to do it and what have you. I think it's great that you do the live training every week. That's a